everyone. Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? Here we are. We are back with another Start 'em and Sit 'em. Nice and early this week. Getting into the content flow for week 9. Not long until the fantasy playoffs happen. So we've got to be diligent. We've got to make our moves. And we've got to make sure that we are on fire. So without further ado, let's get into these starts and sits. I'm going to start with the starts this week at quarterback. And there's a few names here that I think you could be really brave on this week. I have in my top 12 this week, Bo Nix, Geno Smith, Jameis Winston, Caleb Williams, and then just outside that, Joe Flacco. So there's a lot of unusual names here, but the traditional names aren't getting it done. So it's time to look at some of these other names. Bo Nix up against the Baltimore defense that is giving up a whole ton of passing yards. It's second in the NFL in passing yards allowed, giving up plenty of points as well. So you can definitely get cozy with Bo Nix as well with that rushing floor. You should feel pretty confident on that. Geno Smith is another good one. He's had a couple of down weeks, but this is a better matchup against the Rams. He should have a good opportunity here to get into a game that could be a bit of a shootout. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one as well. So I like Geno here in this spot. I also like Jameis Winston. He had a phenomenal game last week. Yes, the Chargers D is a dangerous one to play on, but Jameis Winston has got a lot of targets. He's going to get more vertical with the football. He should get a lot of points here. So I really like him as a start this week. Caleb Williams against Arizona. This should be a really good one for him. He can scramble. He'll get some good yards on the ground, but he is starting to get a bit better in the air as well. So I like him as a start this week as well. Joe Flacco has just been brought back into the team. We've seen what he can already do this season. He's got a lot of weapons to work with, and we can definitely see in a game against the Vikings, he can definitely get that ball down the field. It's a tricky defense, but I do fancy Flacco to be slinging it, especially if they get behind in this game. Moving on to my running back starts this week. I should do quarterback sits first. If we look at the quarterback sits this week, there's a few that, Dak Prescott, on the face of it, it looks like a really good matchup, okay? And Atlanta have got a weak passing attack. But I just don't trust Dak at the moment. I just don't feel comfortable putting him in a lineup and feeling like he's going to be someone who's going to deliver for me. So he is someone I have very much in the sit column. Kyler Murray I have on the edge. I can understand playing him with that rushing floor, but that Chicago D is mean, and it will be stingy to pass on. So I don't necessarily love Kyler Murray this week, but I wouldn't say he's a strong sit. I am very nervous about Jordan Love. He is my quarterback 20 this week. There's a bit of the injury. Then we've got Detroit, who are very good with the takeaways. Jordan Love can definitely throw those. It can be a shootout game, but I am a little bit skeptical on him. Also skeptical on Tua Tagovailoa against Buffalo, and Daniel Jones against Washington, and Justin Herbert against Cleveland. These are all and Aaron Rodgers as well. These are all in my sit territory, as is also Trevor Lawrence. Also, and a big surprising name, CJ Stroud. I have him at quarterback 27 this week against the Jets. If you don't have a better option, you will need to have to endure that, but it's not going to be pretty this week. Moving on to my running backs this week, some of my favorite start options, they're a bit more, I don't want to say obscure, but ones that probably haven't been favored in recent weeks. Devon Achane, he's starting to come good now. That Tua is back and it's the functional offense. He's my running back 16 this week. Again, Brian Robinson Jr., I talk about him most weeks against the Giants. He's running back 20. Feel pretty comfortable with him there. Tyrone Tracy, you've got to watch the health, but he's my running back 23. I do feel like he will get additional usage this week. As with Chase Brown, he's my running back 22. Also like Nick Chubb, I think he's someone that could have a pretty good week. And Bucky Irving, I have as the sort of top of this tree of the running backs. He's just outside my running back twos. He's at running back 28. I do feel like he will accelerate more and will get more touches given how well he played last week as well. If I'm moving into the sit territory now, I just don't like what's going on in Jacksonville. Tank Bigsby seems to be usurping up, but then you have Travis Etienne, who has practiced but hasn't played. What's going on there? It's a bit of a confusing situation. They're going to be playing in Philly. I expect Philly to get up early. I don't expect the game script to really back up a big run game. So I'm probably sitting everyone that's in the Jacksonville backfield this week. I don't love the volume on Raheem Mostert. He is a touchdown guy. So, you have to kind of start him hoping that he scores a touchdown or two. And that is possible. But I'm just a bit skeptical that this is going to be the time for him this week against Buffalo. I can't see the game script heavily supporting that one either. I'm also a bit skeptical on Zach Moss. That role seems to be drying up. Austin Eckler against the Giants. I don't think it's a great matchup for him. That usage is starting to come down. He's a sit for me this week. And then Braylon Allen, Ty Chandler, all of these guys are outside running back 4 range for me. I don't feel comfortable putting either of these guys in my starting lineup, nor to Antonio Gibson. Moving on to my wide receivers. And I have a surprise in my top 12. I have 2 surprises in my top 12, and they're Brian Thomas Jr. and Josh Downs. Brian Thomas Jr. is my wide receiver 11 this week against Philadelphia. It's going to be tough for him because of what's happened with Kirk, but they still have Gabe Davis as well this week. So I do expect Brian Thomas to be the focal point of this offense even more now than he was. So I definitely like him to come up and get more targets and be the main guy in a game that they will be chasing and will need to get down the field. He is the big playmaker for this team. I like him to be my wide receiver 11 this week. I have Josh Downs as a shock as my wide receiver 12 this week. I just think with Joe Flacco, this is Joe Flacco's favorite target. I feel pretty good about Josh Downs getting a lot of work on Sunday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings. Again, a game you would expect them to trail and have to get vertical to get down the field, but they're going to have to get chunk plays. And that's where Josh Downs is really good at getting you those chunk plays. So I really like Josh Downs here this week a lot. I also have Terry McLaurin up there at wide receiver 13. Great matchup against the Giants. I fully expect him to take advantage of that. Tank Dell, going to be a tough one on Thursday Night Football because of the fact that he's not necessarily got a recognized target other than, say, John Mechie on the other side. But having said that, I do expect Tank Dell just to get there on volume. I think he's going to be a big focal point of this offense. I like Lab McConkey this week against Cleveland. I think it's a game that they could potentially be trailing. So I would expect Lab McConkey to come out and get some targets this week. He's my wide receiver 19. Michael Pittman should start to see a resurgence now. Anthony Richardson's been sent to the bench. He's my wide receiver 20. And also a good week for Calvin Ridley. He is my wide receiver 21 this week. I like Calvin Ridley for a volume perspective, and it's against New England. I think this is definitely a really good matchup for Calvin Ridley. If you've been holding him for quite a while, this should be a pretty good one for him. If you're looking for a pick of the Cleveland receivers, Cedric Tillman is the guy I would be going for. But I actually have all 3 Cleveland receivers in my top 36, as do I Jalen McMillan. I think he's going to come along. I think this will be a shootout game. I think Tampa Bay will need to use wide receivers more. If you want a sort of outside bet guy to get a good performance in, Trey Palmer. I'm not sitting here prescribing him to have a really huge game. He's my wide receiver 49. But in terms of a guy for pure upside, a guy who could really come out of nowhere and have a huge week, then Trey Palmer is definitely that guy on people's radars. If I talk about the sits at wide receiver, there's definitely more than a few I'm a bit cautious on this week, and I'm just sort of gearing them up now. But in terms of those, just lost my place. Apologies. A couple of players that I think are going to be looked at in really good spots, but I am cautious about. Jordan Addison on Sunday Night Football. He is seeing a decreasing amount of targets in recent week. It's really hard to trust his workload, especially as we've got TJ Hawkinson coming back. So I am a little bit skeptical of him. Jackson Smith and Jigba has a really, really bad matchup against Josh Wallace. I expect him to be pretty much taken out and very, very quiet. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm very skeptical on again this week. He's another player that I probably will be fading even lower down my ranks as the week goes on. I had him inside my top 30, and then I started to really dissect the matchups, and I moved him all the way down to 50. So I don't really love the Marvin Harrison matchup this week, and I will be staying well clear of him as a result. Other wide receivers I'm worried about. John Menchie's a very popular pickup. He's going to have DJ Reed as cover this week. I don't love that. He's someone that I wouldn't be risking in lineups this week. Keenan Allen is going to have a tough matchup against Garrett Williams. So, again, another one I'm not particularly fond of. One I probably want to get away from quite quickly as well. So, there's some matchups and there's some players there that I will be looking to fade at wide receiver. But just keep an eye on some of these players because even though this week's bad, there is some potential upside moving forward. Quentin Johnston's another one I'm fading this week. Roman Dunze is another as well. So these are players I'm probably not overly keen on. I'm also not keen on Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, and then, of course, the new acquisition for the Baltimore Ravens, Deontay Johnson. None of these guys I feel pretty good about until they've had some time in their offenses and have got a bit more stable. So I am staying well clear of them. All of those are outside of my top 45 plays this week. So staying well clear. I'm also not too keen on Tyler Lockett. He would be at best a stretch flex play. Moving on to tight ends this week. And my tight end plays of the week, other than the usual standards, I love Cade Otton this week against Kansas City. It's definitely a trusted target for Baker Mayfield. We saw this early on. He's someone I'm feeling pretty good about. David Njoku is another one. He's a favorite target of Jameis Winston. Kyle Pitts, after 2 touchdowns last week, he will be in a good spot against Dallas. Jonnu Smith against Buffalo. I expect him to see an uptick. Same with Sam Laporta with no Jameson Williams. He saw an uptick last week. I really like him this week. And also Taysom Hill against Carolina. He is fit. He is healthy. I expect Taysom Hill to have a pretty decent week against Carolina. As for some fades this week, it's pretty much the same usual names. Mark Andrews against Denver, Noah Fant against the Rams. We're still not sure on the health of Dallas Goedert, so that's one to keep an eye on. Isaiah Likely has pretty much become an afterthought. I'm also fading TJ Hawkinson this week. It's his first week back. I expect him to get some targets, but I'm not too confident that he's going to walk straight into that wide receiver, tight end 1 role that we kind of know and love of him. So I'm just a bit cautious of him this week. Unless he's your only start, just be a little bit mindful that it might be a slightly lower start than normal for him. As for DSTs, if you're looking for some options here, the Saints, the Bengals, the Commanders, the Patriots, the Bears, and the Titans, all of those are really top options for me this week. The ones I'll definitely be fading on all accounts this week: the Buccaneers, the Cardinals, the Giants, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Colts, the Panthers, the Dolphins. All of these are ones I'll be absolutely fading this week. And if you're needing to stream a kicker or two this week, you can look at Will Reichard. You can look at Chase McLaughlin. All of these are not too significantly owned. Same with Brandon McManus. Those are the 3. And yeah, just be careful of some of the bigger names this week who could fade hard. Blake Groupie is one this week I don't have particularly high. Jason Sanders is another one as well. Those are names. And Will Lutz, I don't expect this to be his best week either. That's going to do it for the starts and sits. Hope this has been useful as always. Please do like and subscribe. Please do give us a like, add some comments. Be really good to see some growth. But appreciate each and every one of you. Looking forward to dropping the Bible part 1 tomorrow. It will be a pre-record, but I will drop it for you nice and early so you can get straight ahead and preparing for those lineups. But don't forget, as Rush Nation, as always, keep rushing.